Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
High-quality forage is a key resource for cattle producers. We've got advice from the experts at Corteva Agriscience on the best ways to grow more grass and maximize profitability in your operation.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kate Maher. In just a few minutes, we'll head into the field to get insights and information about pasture management and growing more grass for your cattle. But first, as the voice of the cattle industry in Washington, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is making a difference for cattle producers every day. The staff in D.C. work on a number of policy and regulatory issues that could impact the U.S. beef industry. We've got an update on what's happening in Washington in this week's Beltway Beef Spotlight.
There's a lot of conversations relative to tax policy happening here in Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to bring you an update in that regard. This March, Senator John Thune of South Dakota, Representative Sanford Bishop of Georgia, and Jason Smith of Missouri introduced the Death Tax Repeal Act of 2021 to permanently, fully repeal the federal estate tax. This legislation might not become law anytime soon. If you think back to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we weren't able to get it done back when they had a Republican majority in the House, Senate, and White House. However, it's really critically important that we continue banging the drum on this issue and building a public record of support for full permanent repeal, because we know that changes to the death tax may be on the table moving forward. As Senate Democrats, and House Democrats for that matter, work to enact President Biden's policy agendas, they are going to be looking to move those policies through a reconciliation process. And in order to do that and bypass the filibuster, they'll need to have budget balanced legislation. Therefore, they'll be looking at issues like the death tax or stepped up basis, or like-kind exchanges for that matter, as potential revenue raisers. It's really, really important that we continue to preserve the gains that we were able to make in tax reform back in 2017 and not allow for any backsliding or detrimental tax policies to be enacted. Ultimately, cattle producers across the country understand the importance of taxes in supporting our nation and our nation's infrastructure. However, a fair tax code is an equitable one, and we need tax provisions and policies that recognize the unique needs and challenges of agricultural industries, and a common sense provision that allows for the generational transfer of farms to the next group of producers is really, really important, especially when you consider the fact that we've got an aging population and less than 2% of our nation's country produces enough food for us to eat here and abroad. We are really grateful for all of the support on this issue by our key allies on Capitol Hill, and we're going to be calling on our producers to start engaging in this conversation and communicating and educating with their members of Congress, because ultimately grassroots advocacy is what makes us so strong here, and it's really important as these tax conversations ramp up that our producer perspectives continue being represented.
I'm here with Damon Palmer, Pasture and Land Management Business Leader at Corteva Agriscience. Damon, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us, Kate.
So as we look forward to the start of a new grazing season, what are you hearing from producers across the country?
Well, we've got team spread out across the country, and so as the team talks to cattle ranchers, cattle producers, they're hearing a lot of optimism. And as I reflect being in this industry, cattle producers, ranchers, they're so resilient because you come through something like the record winter impact we had in the Southwest this year, whether it's a wildfire, ranchers come out of that optimistic. And I think there's a level of optimism as we come into the spring. And that's buoyed, I think, by some very good things that they're seeing in the industry. When you look at cattle numbers, cattle prices, things seem to be positive. A lot of that's driven from an expectation of exports that continue to be up in 2021 and imports that'll be down. So hopefully there's some good supply and demand things that are in cattle producers' favor this year. And a lot of that is driven by just the high quality product that they're producing. I think some of the last numbers I saw, 80% of beef being produced now is prime or choice. And I think that's up from mid-60s just 10 years ago. So that good quality product is driving some good demand signals and providing some optimism. Now, as we talk to producers, there's always some things that they're concerned about. And we know that there's a good portion of the country that is dry right now. There's a concern of a looming drought, which that's often a concern. But you also couple that with some rising input costs like fertilizer, like grain, and so that's on producers' minds as well.
So you bring up a lot of good points about things that are out of producer control, mainly the weather and drought conditions. How can grazing and pasture and forage land management sort of help producers manage through some of those tough conditions?
Yeah, well, the pasture is normally the single largest asset or most valuable asset that a rancher has. And so good grass management, good pasture management can go a long way in helping offset some of those challenges, especially related to feed costs. And so producers really need to look at what they can do to maximize that grass production and keep cattle out on the pasture longer, optimize stocking rates, and things like that through an array of management practices.
So Damon, I hear a lot of producers refer to themselves as grass farmers, which is really, really true. Why should producers think of maybe their beef-based pasture operation in those kind of terms?
Yeah, so I think producers are really wired well to look at return per head. And that is a good metric to look at on the operation. But as we've dealt with some academics and talked to some ranchers themselves, there's a good balance in looking at return per head and return per acre. And if you look at per head only, I think one great example is that you could have a really good per head metric, but you would be underutilizing your pasture. And so if you can look at those two metrics together, I think that provides a more optimal way to manage the operation. And I think that's just one example of coming at it from a grass farmer mentality, is incorporating some of those metrics and management techniques in the operation.
Yeah, and we're going to take a deeper dive later in the show into some specifics, but maybe what's some high-level advice that you could give producers as the grass starts to get green?
Yeah, so as the grass starts to get green, and here in Indiana, we're a few weeks from that, as you can see, but as the grass starts to get green, I'd really focus in a few areas. Number one, making sure you've got a good grazing management plan, and you're tweaking and adapting that for what's going on the land currently. Make sure that's not something that you put together and file away. You continually update that and make sure that it's tweaked with the latest conditions. The second thing is look at fertilization. I realize with fertilization that can oftentimes be seen as an input cost. Make sure you look at that as an investment because there's a return that comes from that as well. And then the last thing would be weed control. And we know that weeds can rob that precious forage that you've got out there. And so a pound of weeds removed is going to be a pound of forage returned. And so making sure that those are kind of the three high-level areas to look at really to maximize pasture on an operation.
Thanks, Damon. That's really great advice, and we're going to talk to you a lot more during this show. Still to come, we're going to dig deeper into the topic of pasture management and offer expert advice for producers in all parts of the country. We'll be right back.
Getting to run a family farm is a dream come true. When you can grow good grass, there's opportunity to grow plenty of weeds. We want to use the tools that will help us do a better job. I would like the legacy to be that we took really good care of the land and we truly did it as a passion and we did our very best for the right reasons.
Take advantage of the very best in Hereford genetics with the Sandhill Farms Bull and Female Sale, Saturday, March 27th.
We've really tried to put a lot of carcass traits in our cattle. Ultimately, that's going to be a driver in price and profit.
I buy bulls from Sandhills because in the end, there's more money in my pocket selling the end product.
The Schultz family focuses on continuous genetic improvement of their Hereford cattle year after year.
I view everybody that sits in the seats at our sale as our boss. We want our genetics to get better every year. We've got to make the next set of bulls that the customer comes to purchase genetically better than the ones before.
Sandhill Farms, the brand that exceeds your goals. Find out more at the website sandhillfarms.com. you have an upcoming production sale to advertise? Then contact the Cattlemen to Cattlemen marketing team or your breed association to learn more.
Welcome back. We're pleased to be talking with Damon Palmer of Corteva about the value of grass and forages. Damon, the first step is really identifying a problem. So how does somebody go about identifying if they have a weed problem in their pastures, especially this time of year as spring is upon us?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about being more like a grass farmer. And so the first thing to do is get out and scout. As you're out in the pastures, make sure that you're taking account of what's in the pasture. And the best thing to do is to find those weeds and those weed problems when they're small and they're easier to manage versus letting those get out of control. I would also ask people to contact their local ag retailer or their local Corteva range and pasture specialist. And we've got some great resources on rangeandpasture.com that will help with weed ID as well.
Thanks, Damon. So how do you evaluate your pastures to know if there is a problem? Here's Scott Flynn in the field with some helpful advice.
From year to year, we're usually not shocked to see certain weeds pop up again and again. But I think every spring, most producers, cattle producers, can walk out into their pastures and they get this warm, fuzzy feeling when they look out across the field and they see everything that's green. But when you start digging in between grass plants and looking down at what's coming up, you'll see that there are quite a few weeds popping up in your pasture during that time, even though everything looks nice and green. Now the problem is, a field like this that has some patches of annual weeds that have kind of taken over, these patches are eventually going to die out here in a few weeks when we get into the later parts of spring, early parts of summer. And that's great. But the problem is they're going to be replaced with another broadleaf weed more than likely, or even a weedy grass. And so there's several options here. One, you can do absolutely nothing. And in that case, we let nature take its course. And what we find ourselves doing is coming back with a mower a few weeks later and trying to get control of weeds or suppress weeds that way. The other option is to go the cheap route with a herbicide, something like a 2,4-D. And you go in and spray that into a field and we burn down the weeds. But the thing is, we just open up that soil to allow other broadleaf weeds to come into our pasture. And then the third option is to come in with a good soil residual herbicide that's actually going to hold those weeds back for a period of time, several weeks, and it's going to give us the time we need to backfill those bare spots with grasses. Add a little soil fertility on it, and we just make things happen that much faster. So at the end of the day, the best bang for our buck in a pasture early spring is to get on those weeds as soon as possible, get them under control, and start shifting that competitive advantage back to our forage grass species.
Now, Scott didn't talk about specific products, but Damon, I know Corteva has many options available. Duracor is a recent product that's really been a game changer for producers. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Kate, so we've been serving this market, Corteva, for over 60 years. And we've built a stable of products that are highly effective and really relied on by farmers and ranchers. But we were excited in 2020 to bring a new active ingredient into the market, and that's in Duracor. And Duracor had a tremendous launch in 2020. We really liked what we saw in the field and the reactions from ranchers. And Duracor controls over 140 different weeds. It also has a low use rate and can be applied foliar as well as with several different types of fertilizer. As we innovate new products, one thing that we continually look at is how do we improve the environmental profile of our products. And one of the new active ingredients in Duracor is actually a Green Chemistry Award winner. And so we really like that as a part of Duracor as well.
Yeah, that's really great. Now, more on Duracor with Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter.
Last summer, cattle producers and land managers participated in a series of Corteva regional field days aimed at showing them new ways to manage their costs and produce more high-quality forage. Effective weed control can help achieve both goals, and the field days introduced a valuable new tool in the form of Duracor herbicide.
Corteva is so excited to bring a new product to the range and pasture market. This is our first new active ingredient that's coming to the market in over 15 years. So excited to have this new product, Duracor, to provide ranchers the most comprehensive broadleaf weed control Duracor is made up of 2 reduced-risk herbicides. It is powered by Rinsecore, which just won the Green Chemistry Award. So a rancher can feel good about a product that is truly bringing some sustainability to meet their needs.
When we look at the benefits of Duracor, low odor, low use rate, great environmental profile. It's a product that a producer can go out and make an application with and feel confident that they're going to get the job done.
In addition to a strong environmental profile, Duracor offers control of more than 140 broadleaf weed species at lower use rates and with improved application flexibility. This provides the opportunity for cattle producers to increase their profit per acre.
When you get into that mindset that you're in a profit per acre business, you start to look at your pastures a lot more different than before. You start looking at those areas where you don't have as much forage production and the reasons why you don't have as good a forage production. Roughly for every pound of weed pressure that you have in the field, you're going to remove a pound or a pound and a half of forage production. So getting that under control shifts those resources back to those desirable species that we have growing in our pasture, which in turn helps support more beef per acre.
Flynn says Duracor provides improved weed control in a single pass, making it more economical than mowing, especially in high weed pressure situations.
A few things that Duracor addresses that other products in the past have not been as successful at have been members of what we call the carrot family, so wild carrot, poison hemlock, wild parsnip. Those species have been very difficult to control, and a lot of the products that we've used to control them have caused some grass injury. And so to have control of those now without causing any grass injury is pretty significant.
One of the real strengths of this product is going to be its activity on what I consider annual weed problems, primarily things like bitter sneeze weed, things like marsh elder, woolly croton, and other weeds that tend to be the pigweed spectrum, for example, spiny amaranth, which tend to be a real problem, not just in the prairie of Mississippi, but all across the state. I think Duracor is going to bring good control to a number of perennial weeds.
Duracor works very good on a lot of the problem weeds that we have big issues with. For us, that's going to be a variety of chicory, poison hemlock, wild carrot, buckhorn plantain, ragweed, thistle, to just name a few. It's very effective on all those species. It gets very good control on a lot of our problem pasture weeds, and really gets a good control and improves the grass production in the treated pastures.
Using Duracor to maximize your forage through effective broadleaf weed control, along with fertility and sound grazing management, can give you more from every grazing acre, allowing you the possibility of grazing longer or even running more cattle on the same land.
One is that you could be increasing your stocking rate by utilizing this newly available forage. And so having those extra head on helps offset the cost of the herbicide and hopefully helps increase the profits as well.
I think with the cattle market where it is today and the cost of production, producers are going to add fertilizer, and you can either allow your forage to take up that fertilizer and the moisture that you get, or you can allow the weeds to take up the nutrients and moisture. And if you have a significant weed problem, then you're obviously going to lose in terms of your forage productivity. And so that helps maximize the efficiency of the operation by controlling those weeds.
Duracor is also compatible with liquid fertilizer and can be impregnated on dry fertilizer in select states, giving producers the option of one-pass fertilizer and weed control for their pastures. I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
You can find more information on this exciting weed control product by going to DuracorHerbicide.com. And still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll show you some new technology from Corteva that can help you better manage your land and fight back against invasive brush. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to cows. They will not eat them, or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
Join Maddox Cattle Company for their Maternalizer bred cow sale on Wednesday, April 14th at Ogallala Livestock Auction. Selling over 625 head, including 520 5 to 7-year-old cows and 110 first calf heifers. Also offering 15 elite 2-year-old bulls ready to go to work. Maddox Cattle Company Maternalizer composite females emphasize maternal predictability and heterosis. The females are designed to graze year-round with minimal inputs. Don't miss the Maddox Cattle Company Maternalizer bred cow sale on April 14th. For a video of sale offerings and more, visit maddoxcattlecompany.com.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We're talking with Damon Palmer of Corteva Agriscience about good pasture management. Damon, it's great to hear about what DuraCore can do for producers, but Corteva can really help producers in so many other ways, can't they?
We sure can, and we've got a network of range and pasture specialists across the country that can help ranchers meet their land goals. And we know that every ranch is different. Every rancher has different objectives for their pasture, for their rangeland. And so if you go to rangeandpasture.com, you can select your area and find your local range and pasture specialist, and we'll be there to help.
Great, thanks Damon. Now let's hear from one of those specialists. Jeff Clark is a market development specialist with Corteva and has some timely advice.
So when we're talking about pasture weed control, and we're talking about pasture management and putting a plan together, what we want to first do is understand what's in our pastures. It's kind of like looking down at your dinner plate. You want to know what you're going to eat. And that's the same thing with our cattle. We want to know what they're going to be eating, because a lot of weeds are toxic, but if we don't know the weeds that we're talking about or trying to control, it's hard to kind of put those limitations in there. So what we're wanting to do is just come down into our pastures, and we're wanting to understand that the best thing to do is figure out what weeds you have in your pasture, and that's where you can either get with your agronomist or get with a Corteva Agriscience pasture specialist, and they can come out to your pasture and tell you, like, this is a young ironweed. It's a perennial plant. It really starts germinating in late May, and you can see right here that this is a larger tall ironweed plant, and the more mature it gets, that's where a lot of herbicides start to have problems with it. Another driver weed is what they call buckhorn plantain. As you can see here, it's got the seed heads that pop up, and this is the stage that most people try to control buckhorn plantain, and it's really, really hard. It mats out a lot of grass areas. And then another weed that we've got in this plot is also horse nettle. And horse nettle, it puts out a lot of spikes on the leaf and on the stem. A lot of cattle and even horses don't like to graze around it because it pricks that nose, so therefore you're losing, kind of like thistle, you're losing that grazing space. It can equal up, honestly, to 1.5 to 2 pounds of forages that you're missing. So another problematic weed in our pasture management program when we're dealing with ranchers or hay producers is Queen Anne's lace. This is a plant, a weed species that has a lot of producers throwing their hat in the ground because they absolutely do not know what to do to get rid of it, because there's honestly not a herbicide out there that does anything with it. We can burn it, we can suppress it, but there's really not anything out there that actually controls the plant until now, and that is DuraCore. 12 ounces to the acre of DuraCore will absolutely take your Queen Anne's lace species out of your pasture. DuraCore takes out those problems. DuraCore at the 12-ounce rate does a great job on the weeds that you just saw, the tall ironweed, the buckhorn plantain or the broadleaf plantain, the horse nettle, all those driver weeds that really make it hard for cattle to graze or good hay production to be produced. And DuraCore takes out over 140 plus weeds, and we're still counting how many weeds. So we haven't even finished a true count of how many weeds DuraCore can get out of your pasture. So as you can see here, DuraCore cleans up those weeds 12 ounces per acre, and it gives you nothing but forage, and that is what gives you the return of investment on your stocker cows or your cow-calf operation.
So Damon, we've heard about some practices and products from Corteva that producers can use, but there's also some new exciting technology that you have. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so at Corteva over the last 60 years, we've really built our business on our specialists in the field and the technical knowledge, as well as our herbicide products. And so what's exciting about LandVisor is we now bring a third dimension in, which is digital technology, remote sensing, satellite imagery. And when we put that personal consultation, that new technology from a remote sensing perspective, and the herbicides together, there's a great new tool to help maximize land objectives when it comes to mesquite.
That all sounds really cool, Damon. Thanks. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has a closer look at this new technology from Corteva that gives farmers and ranchers a whole new vision for the potential of their land.
Mesquite has long been the enemy of ranchers who want more grass for their cattle and landowners working to provide an improved landscape for wildlife. Now, Corteva Agriscience has developed a powerful new tool to use in the fight to control mesquite and eventually other problem plants. It's called LandVisor.
So LandVisor is a decision support tool that uses sophisticated imagery and integrates data with personal experience from a personal consultant to help ranchers make better decisions. Most ranchers, most landowners know their land. They drive through it, they look at it, but they see it from the roads. What we're doing is giving them a little bit different perspective using imagery, satellite imagery, aerial imagery, other types of imagery, and bringing in the data behind that imagery to help them see their land from a different perspective and see parts of their land, parts of the information that is given them to help them make better decisions. All this is pulled together in one place, and it's not just pulled together, but it's overlaid. It's brought in a way that helps us make decisions based on multiple sources of information, rather than just, I see a lot of brush over here. So it brings in a lot of the return on investment information. It goes in and helps predict what kind of increase you would get in forage so that you can do some what-if scenarios. What if I treat this area? What am I going to get? What if I treat this area? What am I going to get? And we can compare those right then and there on a real-time situation.
Aimed first at mesquite, LandVisor will ultimately be a tool land managers will be able to use against a variety of invasive species.
We're launching LandVisor this year in the Southwest on mesquite, and there's a reason for that. If we can do mesquite, there's a lot of different things we can do with LandVisor. The potential of LandVisor is really endless. It's a technology that we can take into a lot of different areas. We do have plans for expansion of LandVisor. We're going to be looking at different species in the coming years, prickly pear, and some other ones that we'll be looking at, as well as other industries in the U.S.
LandVisor uses state-of-the-art digital technology teamed with one-on-one expertise from Corteva to give cattlemen and land managers a customized approach to reaching their goals, whether that's growing more grass or sculpting the landscape to benefit wildlife. Several Texas ranchers now have firsthand experience seeing the value LandVisor can bring to their operations.
It was a game changer to me because I didn't know the soil samples, I didn't know the density, and I didn't know the potential that this ranch plot had at that time. And so looking at that program, and you could see on that deal the potential and the potential gain, that changed everything. That opened up my eyes to what I need to do to make this ranch a better ranch and to leave it better than I found it.
So LandVisor came in and did some satellite images of the place. He really zeroed in on what areas will produce the most bang for our buck. And he helped us to see where the highest density of plants were.
It's not all based on technology. It's not all based on digital. There is still a human factor involved. We still put eyes on the ground, and we still look at mesquite as to determine if it's ready to spray or not. So this is the best of both worlds. Not only do you get the technology and the digital, but you get private consultation along with it that is making it unique to your property.
Well, he took all the guesswork out for us. We didn't really know where to start.
And he helped us to really pinpoint that. We could have invested a lot of money in some other areas and not realized it until several years down the road that it wasn't going to do anything for us. So we hope that we'll be able to run some more cows on the place. We're thinking that it may increase our carrying capacity by about 44%. And that's just one little area that we targeted, and that's going to increase the carrying capacity for the whole ranch by 44%. So those are some big numbers that we're excited about.
I'm not going to waste that money spraying someplace where it's not good soil, and I'm not going to have that good grass. So right there, I'm saving money on that. Looking at where the better grass is and where I can improve that land, and then showing me how many more cattle on there, then I can budget everything I have out, and I can also maybe look into the future as to how much money I'll be making off that little bit of land, and what my cattle need to maybe make for that, so that the spraying is paid for by the cattle. And so that it just really helps a lot.
Not only does LandVisor give landowners the ability to target their investment where it will provide the greatest forage production, it also helps guide the timing of spraying.
Not only are we helping them determine where to spray, but we're helping them determine when to spray. That timing piece is critical. That's industry leading, and nobody else has this type of information that we have. The control is 100% still in the hands of the landowner, but we give them the tools with more information to help make the right decision.
If we hadn't have used LandVisor and I would have sprayed just thinking this is the time to spray, I wouldn't have got a kill and I would have wasted my money. And then I might have looked and said, well, that doesn't work, and I don't know what they're talking about, but that's not the case. This lets you know when is the best time to do this and when you're going to get that kill.
It really is kind of industry breaking in terms of what we do with it from there, because we can actually come in then and do some post-treatment analysis as well. So we will come back in, we will look at it a year later, use that in the planning process for the next year. So it builds from one year to the next.
The more information you have about these plants and your land, you're better prepared to come up with a plan of attack against these mesquite and other plants that you want to get rid of. And without that, you're kind of guessing, and you're going to waste money. And as a rancher, you don't want to do that.
In Texas, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
If you'd like more information about the LandVisor tool that can help you make better, more profitable decisions to improve your forage, then visit the website landvisor.corteva.us. Still ahead, we'll examine the Environmental Stewardship Awards program and the value those winners bring to the beef industry. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grass is the center of our universe. We've got to have a grass program that we can count on and plan on. That's what we need to sustain us, to keep us growing, to keep us prospering.
That certain time in the day when you can take a deep breath, knowing your work is done. That's the feeling Aspen products can create. Cost-effective alternatives to name brands that deliver the same results. Qualaxin is one of them. Use it to prevent and treat respiratory disease in your herd. Then breathe easy. Find them at Animal Health International.
Welcome back to Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kate Maher, along with Damon Palmer of Corteva Agriscience. Damon, Corteva has been a longtime sponsor of the Environmental Stewardship Award program. Why does Corteva believe so strongly in this important program?
Well, we do believe strongly in the program, and I think we're going on over 25 years sponsoring it. And really what makes us a strong supporter of this is that it aligns well with several things. Number one, consumers are quickly changing in how they purchase their food products. Right now we have 4 generations actively purchasing food, and what we've seen is the younger the generation, the more their food decisions are value-based versus maybe fact-based. And so what the Environmental Stewardship Award program does is it really allows the values associated with environmental stewardship to really align to the facts that are being implemented on the ranch and provide a good story. And the Environmental Stewardship Award Program is something consumers can hear more and more about and start to align these values and facts with what we do and what our customers do on the ranch. And then from a Corteva perspective, our products really help aid in stewardship of the land, especially when it comes to invasive species and brush. And so it's just a real nice win-win that we see for the consumer, Corteva, as well as the ranching community, really trying to amplify what they do day to day, being really the first and true environmentalist.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate the continued support of Corteva. Thank you. Now let's head to New York and take a look at the Region 1 winner for 2020.
In western New York, just 45 minutes east of the city of Buffalo, SK Herefords is a family cattle and crop operation that was started in 1996. That's when fifth-generation farmers Phil and Don Kepler merged their operation with the one owned by family friend Dave Schubel.
I'm the K in the SK, and it's a family-run farm with my daughter Alana and her husband Zach and my wife Dawn and my business partner Dave Schubel. Alana and Zach are the sixth generation, and I have 7 grandchildren and one on the way that I hope will be the 7th.
Taking care of the land is a top priority for everybody here at SK Herefords, from me to my parents to Zach and anybody that we come in contact with. We make sure that that priority is clear.
While their 1,200 acres in upstate New York is a great place for raising the family's cattle, the farm's geographic location creates some challenges.
All of our decisions are based upon our location. We have Oak Orchard Creek, which goes through the eastern part of the farm, which flows directly into Lake Ontario.
We've taken a lot of steps to help keep the creek clean. We have buffer strips that are between our cattle and the creek, and we've made a lot of permanent fencing around the creek to kind of deter the cattle from getting close to the creek.
You'll get a 3-4-inch rainstorm that'll come through, and the water's gushing across the pasture and it's carrying those nutrients. Well, when it hits that buffer strip, filter strip, it grabs those nutrients and boom, holds them right in place instead of letting them go down and continuing on into the creek. Our goal is to keep that water as pristine as possible until that all the people that go canoeing and kayaking and fishing and swimming can all have that wonderful experience of having great, clean, fresh water.
The vision at SK Herefords is to produce high-quality beef while conserving the farm's natural resources. They accomplish that with no-till cropping systems and a rotational grazing plan that protects the health of their soil and grass. They also built a covered feeding barn to give cattle shelter from the elements.
The cows love it. It's concrete, and that's where we feed the cows during the wintertime, and it gives them some reprieve from the winter weather. They can go outside up to the other barn for water, and then in the summertime it provides awesome shade for them to get cool.
It's a huge benefit for cattle health, cattle performance, cattle gain. We have a section at the end where the manure can be scraped to, and then it can be loaded into the manure spreader to be spread on, the various fields that might need fertilizing.
The family also looks for ways to enhance wildlife habitat on their farm, fencing out 5 acres of milkweed for monarch butterflies and working to protect songbirds.
On a regular basis, my dad and I and Zach make decisions that will benefit the wildlife in terms of delaying cutting a hayfield, because we know that the ground nesting songbirds are getting ready to hatch out and we don't want to destroy their nests.
SK Herefords really believes that cattle and the environment work together, that they are symbiotic.
SK Herefords is a farm that extension specialists love to have because they're always willing to try new things. They're willing to listen and then evaluate what that might mean for their operation.
It's all part of being steward. Does it cost us money? Yeah, it sure does. Why do we do it? Because it's the right thing to do.
Telling their story of sustainability to beef consumers is also important. A few years ago, SK Herefords began selling beef at farmers markets in upstate New York.
We love connecting with the consumers when we sell our beef at the farmers markets. We sit between 2 cities of over 1 million people, And those folks, when we go to their farmers markets, they like to talk with the farmer. They like to be able to connect with that farming community because they don't have that opportunity. And we get to tell our story. We get to tell the story of our farm.
And it addresses the desire of the consumer now to find out where their food comes from. So what better way to do it than have the producer actually tell them on a Saturday morning at a market?
When we go to the farmers markets, you basically talk to people, and I've noticed in the past years, like, you've actually had to really educate people, but now they're starting to like relate to us. You're like, wow, they're starting to get it.
So interacting with our customers at the farmers market, it really gives us the opportunity to show the customers that we not only care for our cattle, but we care for the land as well.
Working together each day, the SK Hereford family lives their commitment to raising cattle the right way and managing their land to ensure the operation is around for generations to come.
I believe in what we're doing. I wouldn't be here doing it if I didn't. And as having young children, I want to leave this place in as good a shape as I can for the future generations.
I think we're living our dream of farming, raising cattle, raising forages, raising kids and grandkids. I think it's a very happy place at SK Hereford's.
We care for the land because it's a God-given responsibility. We're all part of the land, and we need the land, the resources of the land, and we need it to carry on to the next generation.
If you'd like to find out more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos and videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for the award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. Damon, thank you so much for being here with us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. As we wrap up, any final thoughts for our producers as they head into springtime?
Yeah, a few thoughts. Number one, I want to thank everybody out there for what they do to produce the most tasty, high quality protein and deliver that on plates around the world. A lot of work goes into doing that, and we appreciate everything our producers do. Secondly, hopefully producers will look at some of the resources we've provided, look at our website, and where we can be of assistance to help in pasture management. We really want to do that because it really can aid to the optimization of the ranch. And then I'd like to end with just a plea for people to operate safely. This is one of the most dangerous occupations in the world, and just stop and think every time you can about making the safe decision so that you can make sure you get home to your kids, your family, your friends, whoever you're going home to.
Yeah, really important, powerful message. Damon, thank you and Corteva for your support of farmers and ranchers across the country. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Remember, the full range of Corteva Agriscience products can be suited to fit nearly any rangeland or pasture. For help in selecting the best product for your individual situation and management goals, you can visit rangeandpasture.com. When we return, it's time for a visit with our good friend Baxter Black. Stay with us.
Out of the box for the Re-Ride Side of Rodeo. 3 audio books, rodeo novels by Baxter Black. A total of 23 hours following our cowboy guys and gals on the road to the finals. Rambunctious, exciting, kind-hearted, and funny, of course. $39.90. CDs or downloads, BaxterBlack.com. 800-654-2550. On the road to the rodeo, horse show, state fair, ball game, or grandma's house, climb on up and take a ride with me.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at Prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
Having a new veterinarian out to your place to preg check your cows can create some spirited discussion. See, these cowmen, they wouldn't ever admit to really liking one of these old shells that they wore out, but they recall her better days and want to make sure she's had every chance. So the conversation might go something like this. This will be the Green Young Veterinary. And this will be the experienced cowman. What's the story on that good old cow? Well, she's sort of gimpy on the left hind leg and her breathing's kind of fast. Shoot, I remember when she was born. It wasn't that long ago. Well, somebody bobbed her tail last year, but well, I guess you ought to know. You bet your life I know that cow. She's a good one as I've saw. I just thought since she was getting thin and got that big lump on her jaw. That ain't nothing, just a little knot. Yeah, but one eye's blue, and she lappied her calf, and she ain't got a tooth in her head. Listen, kid, I remember that cow. Well, I even milked her for a while. Sure, but she's got a swing bag and one big tit and skin like a crocodile. Kid, you gotta admit she knows the range and every water hole. Well, I hate to tell you she's open now and these prolapse stitches won't hold. She's nothing to me, don't get me wrong. I know she's getting old. Well, you're the boss, and if you want to keep her, whatever you say goes, but if it is me, I'd cull her fast and never shed a tear. Well, I got a little grass out behind the house. Let's run her another year. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
Do you have an upcoming production sale to advertise? Then contact the Cattlemen to Cattlemen marketing team or your breed association to learn more.
Welcome back. Do you want to re-watch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen or catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from around the country. Go to youtube.com/Cattlemen to Cattlemen to check us out. We're wrapping up this week's show with legacy photos. These are great pictures submitted by our viewers of daily life on their farms and ranches. Let's take a look. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kate Maher. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.